I took the same shortcut every night. A few years ago, I worked the closing shift at a grocery store on the edge of town. My shift always ended just after 11 p.m., and by the time I locked the doors and started walking home, the streets were almost completely empty. There were two ways to get home. One followed the main road where there were still a few cars and bright street lights. The other was a shortcut through a quiet residential neighborhood. It saved me almost 15 minutes, so I took it every single night. For nearly a month, nothing unusual happened. Then one Tuesday, I noticed someone behind me. He wasn't close enough to make me nervous, but close enough that I could hear his footsteps every now and then. I glanced over my shoulder. A man wearing a dark hoodie was walking in the same direction. I didn't think much of it. People walk at night. At the next intersection, I turned left. So did he. Another block later, I crossed the street. He crossed too. I convinced myself it was just a coincidence. When I reached my apartment building, I looked back one last time. The man had stopped. He was standing beneath a broken streetlight, completely still. I hurried inside and forgot about it. The next night, he was there again. Same dark hoodie, same distance, same slow pace. Every time I looked back, he kept walking without saying a word. By the fourth night, I decided to test him. Instead of taking my usual shortcut, I suddenly turned down a narrow side street that led nowhere near my apartment. I expected him to continue straight. He didn't. He turned with me. My heart immediately started racing. I walked faster. His footsteps stayed perfectly behind mine. Not faster, not slower, exactly the same rhythm. I reached the end of the street and realized it was a dead end. The only way out was to walk back past him. I looked over my shoulder. No one was there. The street was completely empty. The footsteps had stopped. I stood there for almost a minute, trying to catch my breath. Finally, I laughed at myself. Maybe I was just tired. Maybe I had imagined the whole thing. As I turned around to leave, someone whispered directly behind my ear, "Wrong way." I spun around. Nothing, no one. I ran all the way home without looking back. The next morning, I decided never to use that shortcut again. A week later, I mentioned the strange experience to an older coworker. His face immediately changed. He asked me one question. Was he wearing a dark hoodie? I nodded. He went quiet for several seconds before saying, "You're not the first person to describe him." Apparently, years earlier, a man had been killed while walking home through that same neighborhood after finishing a late shift. People still claimed they saw someone following them there. Always the same distance, always silent, always waiting for them to make one wrong turn. I drive home after work now. I've never walked that neighborhood again. But every once in a while, when I stop at a red light near that street, I catch someone standing under the broken street light, wearing a dark hoodie, watching the road. Someone matched my pace. I started taking long walks every night after my father passed away. Sleeping became impossible. My apartment felt too quiet, and lying in bed only made my thoughts louder. Walking was the only thing that helped clear my head. Around midnight, the streets near my neighborhood were almost empty. I followed the same route every night, a small park, 2 quiet streets, and a long sidewalk beside an old cemetery. It wasn't the safest route, but it was peaceful. One Friday night, something felt different. About 20 minutes into my walk, I heard footsteps behind me. They weren't close, just far enough away that I couldn't tell who it was. I looked over my shoulder. No one. The sidewalk stretched for hundreds of feet under dim streetlights, completely empty. I kept walking. A few seconds later, step, step, step. The footsteps returned. This time I stopped. Silence. I started walking again. The footsteps started again, perfectly matching mine. I sped up. So did they. I slowed down. They slowed down too. It felt impossible. There was no one behind me. I crossed the street, hoping I'd imagined everything. The sound crossed with me. By now my hands were shaking. I pulled out my phone and turned on the flashlight. Nothing, no person, no animal, just an empty sidewalk, disappearing into darkness. I told myself to stay calm and kept moving toward home. As I passed the cemetery entrance, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. The footsteps were no longer behind me, they were beside me, exactly one step to my right, as if someone invisible was walking shoulder to shoulder with me. I refused to look. Every instinct told me not to. I stared straight ahead and kept walking. Then, a quiet voice whispered, "Don't stop." I froze anyway. The footsteps continued for 3 more steps. Without me. Step, step, step. Then they disappeared. I ran the rest of the way home. The next morning I returned in daylight. I wanted to prove to myself that fear had played tricks on me. Everything looked normal. Until I reached the sidewalk beside the cemetery. There, in the dust covering the concrete, were 2 sets of footprints. Mine and another set, walking perfectly beside them. The strange part wasn't that there were footprints. It was that the second set stopped exactly where I had stopped the night before. Mine continued toward home. The other pair simply ended, as if whoever had been walking beside me had vanished into thin air. I never took another midnight walk again. But sometimes when I can't sleep and open my apartment window, I hear footsteps outside. Slow, calm, matching the rhythm of my breathing.